I'm going to tell you about my story tonight, and then more importantly, what's happened since an accident that I was in several years ago, almost 35 years ago now, and that was a plane crash. And I know in this room, we attorneys, and I have practiced law myself, deal with accidents, we deal with death cases, we deal with very severely hurt people. And in my case, I survived a plane crash where 112 people died. So it was a tremendous tragedy. And before I tell you about that, I want to make sure you understand that this is my story and you have your own. I say this all the time. Everybody has their own plane crash. There are plane crashes all across this room. I don't know what they are. I don't know who has a plane crash. Jim has a plane crash. Dr. Ramos has a plane crash. Everybody I've met here tonight has their own plane crash. It might not be as bad as what I went through. It might be worse than I went through. But when I tell you about mine, trust me, please believe me, I'm not trying to downgrade what anybody's been through here. There are cancer survivors all across this room. It's a big group tonight. And I understand that. And when I tell my story, I know you have your own, which might be more dramatic than mine. But I want to share mine with you tonight. It's interesting when Jim's talking about the Nuggets, I was thinking about this when he was talking about it, was that I did the Nuggets for 18 years. We went, I think, 8 or 9 years in a row without making the playoffs. And almost half the teams in the NBA make the postseason, so you have to be really bad not to make the playoffs, and we were really bad. So the decade of the 90s, I started in 1992. I went back and looked up the other day. The decade of the 90s, the Nuggets had the third worst record in the NBA. It was actually the Dallas Mavericks had the worst. Then it was New Jersey Nets and then the Nuggets. There was one year we went 11-71. We won 11 games, lost 71. That's a long season. At one time we were 5-59. We rallied to win 71 games, to win 11 games and lose 71. So all those years the Nuggets, we were terrible. I leave, I go to the Rockies. They had come off a World Series appearance in 2007, went to playoffs in 2009. I had the team in 2010. What do? They go straight downhill. And what do the Nuggets do? They win a championship. What's up with that? It's like, don't hire me. No wonder Ramos Law didn't hire me, because they were going to go downhill if they did that. Let me tell you about my plane crash, and I'll just hit it briefly, and more importantly, what's happened since then. And that's why I was asked to come here and talk tonight, because of lessons that I've learned from surviving a crash where 112 people died, including everybody around me. Everybody around that plane died. I'm sitting in row 23 in a DC-10. Little boy sitting in front of me passed away. The guy on my left died. His wife, who's on his left, died. The one across the aisle from me died. The guy behind me died. My travel companion, my boss, great friend, Jay Ramsdell, was sitting 7 rows back and to my right. He died in the crash. I came out of this crash in the middle of a circle of people who died, and I came out without any serious injuries. I got my life given back to me. I got a second chance at this that all these people around me, and 112 total, did not get. And I feel like, and I think this is why I'm here tonight, I feel like I have some things I can share with you tonight after surviving this plane crash when everybody around me didn't, that maybe you can take into your life as a survivor. I'm introduced as a plane crash survivor, which is accurate. I am. This happened a long time ago, but I'm a plane crash survivor. There aren't too many of us. Some of the attorneys in the room might know a few that you represented, might know some other people. There are probably some people in this room that have a connection to the crash that I was in, but there are very few of us. And so I think we're in this small fraternity of people who can talk to other people about what they learned by surviving this tragedy. And I want to share that with you tonight. Real quick with the plane crash, 1989, we're talking 35 years ago coming up this summer. United Flight 232, you might remember that crash. It originated in Denver, bound for Chicago. We blew an engine about halfway to Chicago. 296 people were aboard this plane, and we blew an engine. The first thing I thought when it happened, we're cruising along at 37,000 feet. I know there's at least one pilot in this room. You can appreciate this. We're cruising at 37,000 feet, an hour into a 2-hour flight to Chicago, and I heard this explosion. And guys, to give you an idea of what it sounded like and that it felt like after that, the first thing I thought was a bomb has gone off. I honestly thought a terrorist had planted a bomb, it had been detonated, and we started to drop. Almost a complete free fall drop. And as you might gather, panic took over the cabin, and I thought to myself, that's it. We're going to hit the ground, and that's it for everybody. And it was interesting because I was thinking about this not too long ago. what I was thinking in those moments after the explosion took place, we started to drop, and I asked myself two questions very calmly. I wasn't panicking at all. I was thinking, all right, how long does it take a DC-10 to drop 37,000 feet? And I thought, I have no idea. Whether it's a minute, it's 5 minutes, it's 10, I have no idea how long it's going to be until I die. That's what I was thinking. And then I thought to myself, all right, how many people are aboard this plane? And there were 296, and the number 200 hit my head. And I thought, well, that's a lot of people, and I was off by almost 100. So those are two calm questions I asked myself. I didn't have the answer to either one of them. And about the time I was thinking about answering the second one, I could feel the plane start to come out of that drop. I could feel the plane start to lift up again, and eventually, after about 4 or 5 minutes, we leveled off again. We were moving forward, we weren't dropping anymore, and we waited very anxiously for someone to tell us, all right, what had happened and what kind of predicament we're now in. And that came about 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes after the explosion, when Captain Al Haynes, who's passed away now but became a good friend of mine, our cockpit captain, got on the PA system and said, the explosion you heard and felt was not a bomb going off. He said it was a number 2 engine, 3-engine aircraft is a DC-10. He said the number 2 engine has exploded. He said when it did, it injured the rear of the aircraft. The exact words, he said, we're having a lot of trouble controlling this plane, which brought some of the panic back inside the cabin. Then he said, we've been given a directive, make an emergency landing in Sioux City, Iowa. He said, I want everybody in their seats. Seat belts are fastened, they're pulled tight. You cannot get out of your seat under any circumstance. You can't get up and talk to people. You can't go to the bathroom. You have to stay in your seat, he said, because we're in serious trouble. And again, when he said those two words, a lot of the panic came back in the cabin. We didn't know this at the time, but I found out much later, and at least one person in the room can appreciate this. The entire hydraulic system, didn't mean anything to me when I heard it, the entire hydraulic system had been eliminated with that explosion, which means, I am told, over and over for 35 years, you're not supposed to be able to fly a plane that uses hydraulics. You're supposed to be able to grab some control of the plane, but when you put it in a simulator, which has happened, I'm told, over 500 times now, 500 different times, a simulator at the old airport, Stapleton. There's still an operational simulator there. I think it's owned by United Airlines, and they rent it out to other airlines. They've tried that in our conditions, a DC-10, a complete hydraulic failure, and not one time out of 500 does a computer ever come back and say you've landed safely. Every single time, 500 plus, it might be way more than that now. Computer says the hydraulics are taken out, you crashed, you nosedive down, everybody's dead. So in our case, all I can do is chalk it up to a miracle. That's all I can tell you. It doesn't add up physically, mechanically, that we were able to stay in the air and get to Sioux City. The cockpit crew realized they couldn't slow the plane down. If they pulled back on the remaining 2 throttles, the 1 and the 3, if they did that, they're going to lose control of the plane. Every time they tried to pull back to eliminate airspeed, the plane would tip to the right. And I could feel that. I felt that a couple different times. I could feel the right wing go down, left wing come up, and it felt like we were just taking a severe bank, which we were. So they couldn't slow the plane down. No hydraulics meant there's no brakes, there's no steering. The yoke is locked in place. You can't move it 1 degree right or 1 degree left. And they had no brakes, which means they couldn't slow down. Once they got down, they couldn't control the plane veering off one side of the runway or the other. That's the circumstance they had. And maybe this is the biggest factor, was no airspeed meant they had to land at an incredible rate of speed. A normal DC-10 landing is about 120 miles an hour when it touched the ground. We hit at 255 miles an hour. They couldn't slow the plane down. You put all those things together and you got disaster, and that's what happened to us. As soon as we hit down, upon impact, craziness. I mean, out of control in the cabin. We hit down so incredibly hard. Bodies are being thrown about. Some were still trapped in their chairs. The chairs had given, they're thrown in their chairs. Others thrown from their chairs. There's smoke, there's fire, debris, all in the first couple of seconds after we hit down. And I remember telling myself after maybe 10 or 15 seconds, I'm in that brace position with my forehead tucked in the seat back in front of me, crossed my arms, holding the seat back in front of me. That was our brace position, which we had practiced actually. And I remember looking around, seeing all this stuff going on, thinking something's going to hit me. And amazingly, nothing ever did. And after about 10 or 15 seconds, I'm thinking, all right, we've hit down hard. There's a lot of people that aren't alive right now. There's a lot of people that are hurt. But it felt like we hit the ground, bounced a couple times, and we're sliding forward. And I thought, okay, we'll slide to a stop, and then I'll assess things then. About the time I had that thought, we flipped over frontwards. We kind of cartwheeled end to end. The nose of the plane dug in the runway, and we flipped over. The crash was videotaped. A local cameraman came out and videotaped the crash. And if you look it up, you're going to find it really easy on the internet, United Flight 232. And you can see, if you have a chance to zoom in on this video, you can see the nose of the plane through all the smoke hit the ground and flip over, and that's what happened to us. We slid about 1,200 feet, flipped over, broke into all these big pieces and literally thousands of little ones. And I'm in a piece, I'm in row 23 in a 37-row plane, and the front of the plane breaks off from me, the back of the plane breaks off from me, and we go different directions. We veered off to left, and from the time, we slid 1,200 feet, flipped over, and slid another 4,100 feet, so well over a mile from start to finish. Ended up in a cornfield next to the airport, stopped very abruptly. And at that point, I'm still hanging in my chair, I'm upside down, my seatbelt's intact, my seat's intact, one of the very few people in that position. But I unbuckle my seatbelt and drop down, the ceiling knockers are upside down, and I didn't see any way to get out. My plan with the flight attendant was to, emergency exit is about where this woman's sitting over to my right here, and my plan was to go over there and open that emergency exit, go and deploy the chute, go down the chute, and she would help people get into the chute. I would help them on the runway. I looked over at that emergency landing, or the emergency exit, and it was gone. There was nothing left of it. It was a wall of burning scrap, basically, and I had no plan B. My plan B was to just move away from the smoke and the fire. Eventually, got to the back of the plane, found an opening, helped some other people out the plane, got outside the plane. We're in the middle of the afternoon now, so bright sunlight. I'm in a cornfield, and I think I was the last person out of my section. I just followed people. They all took a right turn for some reason and followed people into the cornfield. The result of the crash was that 112 people died, as I said, and including everybody around me and my great friend, my guy that I was traveling with and was my boss. I was working back then for a minor league basketball system. Jay Ramsdale sitting 7 rows back of me. 112 people died, 110 that day and 2 more later that week. And Jay was one of the ones that had to have his dental records brought in to identify him. He got burnt very badly. That's my plane crash. And again, I know you have your own. And what I went through was very difficult, but maybe what some of you have gone through might be even tougher than what I've described. And I'm going to say this, and I hope it makes sense in a moment, but when I look back at the crash, and I think some of the attorneys who dealt with clients who have been through accidents can appreciate this in this room. I look back, and I've done this for a long time, I look back at that crash of Flight 232 today, and I've done this for a while, and I see the easy part. The more difficult part was dealing with the aftermath of it, the post-trauma stress disorder that all of us went through that survived that crash, and it was really, really difficult. This is 1989, and I had never heard that term before. I'd never heard of post-trauma stress disorder, never heard it before. And I went to a trauma counselor. He said, "Yeah, that's what you're suffering from." It's like, what are you talking? I've never heard that. Should I write that down? I mean, what are you talking about? And he said, it was interesting. He said, "You know what, Jerry? There are 4 things you're going to go through now. Because as a result of what you experienced in that crash, like everybody else who survived, 4 stages of post-trauma stress." He said, number 1 is going to be survivor's guilt. You're going to feel guilty because you survived that crash and everybody around you did not, including an 18-month-old boy sitting in front of me. He said, stage 2 is going to be listlessness, where things used to mean something to you, they won't anymore, like your spiritual convictions, which I didn't have any at that time, but your job, your family, they won't have that value they used to have in your life. He said, after that, you're going to get angry. You're going to get mad at whoever might be responsible for the crash, and stage 4 is going to be depression. You're going to go through depression like everybody else did that survived that crash. You know what happened? That guy stood up and walked out of my office, because we met in my office, and I said to myself, the things that he just described happened to other people. They don't happen to me. They don't happen to Jerry Schemmel. Are you kidding me? Tough Midwestern born and raised guys. Every time you get knocked down, what do? You pick yourself back up, right? You got a problem, you find the solution to it. Execute that solution, and you move on. You lay out help. You certainly aren't going to get depressed. I was going to be the one exception that guy's talking about. But all the things that trauma counselor said would happen to me, they happened to me just like you said they would, and I never saw it coming. And I've learned from those experiences, and that's what I share with you tonight. Number 1, 3 things for you tonight from a plane crash survivor where everybody around me died. Number 1 is, I think we have to focus in our lives, not just professionally, but personally, on the real meaning of success. Think about that word. We hear that word all the time. I heard it 3 times tonight in different settings. That are once out in the cocktail hour, once at the table, and once when I went to get dessert just a moment ago. See, we're talking about success. And I think for the most part, people have the same idea of success. It's probably setting a goal, striving to get there, maybe realizing some of the rewards, but I want to be up here. This plateau, success for me is right here. After surviving a plane crash where all these people died around me, my idea of success is different. I don't think success should be measured by the spot we get to in our lives or our professional careers. I think it should be measured by the things we do along the way to get here. I think the real meaning of success is focusing on the journey rather than the destination. We've all heard that. I know that that's probably overused, that phrase, but man, does that hit home for me. And if you can't see it hit home from my perspective, I want to give you a different one and a quick story. Some of you might remember, I told Dr. Ramos this story when I met with him not too long ago. Some of you might remember the name Eric Heiden. Anybody remember him, speed skater? Some older people like me in the room remember Eric Heiden. In 1980, Eric Heiden won 5 Olympic gold medals in speed skating. He was overshadowed some because that's the year the Americans won the gold, beat the Russians, Miracle on Ice and all that. But Eric Heiden that year won 5 Olympic gold medals. In the process, set 2 world records. So I'm in college at the time, a sophomore in college. I remember picking up a newspaper and reading 2 months after the Olympic Games that Eric Heiden had lost all 5 of his gold medals. He didn't know 2 months after he won them where those medals were physically. And I thought, well, this is really interesting because I would have won 1 bronze medal. I would have had security guards around it, slept with the thing, never the thing out of my sight. And he had 5 gold medals and he lost them all. I thought, this guy's crazy. At the end of that article, there's a quote from Eric Heiden that said, "I don't care one bit where those medals are." I remember this like it happened yesterday so distinctly in my head right now. I remember thinking to myself, this guy is crazy. He's got the wrong idea about success. If I would have won one bronze medal, I've been basking in the glory of a bronze medal. I'm an Olympian and I won them. Are you kidding me? He had 5 gold medals and he said he didn't care where they were. I thought, this guy's got it all. He's got the wrong idea about success. Fast forward, I'm guessing 20 years or so, 25 years. I pick up a USA Today newspaper and I read that Eric Heiden is the team doctor for the Sacramento Kings in the NBA. And I thought, wow, I was still doing the Nuggets. I thought, next time we go to Sacramento, I'll see if I can find him and ask him about his medals because I'm still really curious. So the next time we're out there, I remember this distinctly because it was on my birthday in November, but we played at Arco Arena, their old arena in Sacramento. It's about a 20-mile drive outside of town. I remember taking a taxi, and it was $100. Like, what am I doing? I was spending extra. I could have ridden the bus for free. Anyway, I go out there looking for Eric Heiden. And I'm not a hero worship guy. Famous people don't do a lot for me, but I wanted to meet him and ask him where those medals were. So I go to the Kings locker room early, and I get in. I got a media pass hanging from my neck, and I walk in. I can see Eric Heiden in the training room, back of the locker room, reading a newspaper. I thought, I'll never get a better chance than this. But the media is not allowed in the training room in the NBA or in Major League Baseball. You can go in the clubhouse, locker room, but you can't go in the training room. So I'm thinking, how do I do that? So I turn my back like this, and I flip my media pass around to where it's blank, and I walk right past the security guard. It's amazing where you can get in life when you act like you know where you're going. All right, it's amazing. So I walk right past, and there's Eric Heiden sitting right here. I mean, he's like, I never have better opportunities. So I go up and introduce myself, and I said, I just got a couple of questions. He said, take all the time you want. Players aren't coming in for their half hour. I got here early. And I said, I got 2 questions. Number 1, did you ever find your medals? And he's like, yeah, I got a story about that. We found them in 1986. So they found him 6 years later. Story goes that his parents lived in Madison, Wisconsin at the time, and he brought his medals over to his parents' house, and they had them laying on a coffee table. His parents' friends had brought some young kids over, so they got the toy box in the attic. Brought the toy box down for the kids to play. Kids played with the toys, but they put the medals in the bottom of the toy box and put the toys on top. And then got sent back up to the attic, and his parents were living under his 5 gold medals for 6 years. He said when the parents finally moved from one house to the other, they went through everything and they found them. They thought they were gone, stolen, lost, whatever. He said, yeah, we found them 6 years later. I said, that's interesting. I said, all right, question number 2. I remember a quote from you that said, I don't care one bit where those medals are. I said, do you still feel that way? And this is what he said to me, guys, and I'll never forget this. He said, I get no satisfaction out of looking at my 5 gold medals. My satisfaction comes from looking back at the hard work I put in and the sacrifices that I made to get those medals. You know what Eric Heiden, I think, was doing in his life, certainly in his sports life, his athletic career? He was focusing on the journey, the hard work, the sacrifice, all the things it took to get to the level he wanted to get to, which was a gold medal that turned into 5 gold medals. I think Eric Heiden had it right. When you focus on the journey, that was his point to me, when you focus on the journey, destination takes care of itself. And I really believe, and I know when I walked out of that interview at Ramos Law years ago, I felt that from that law firm. And I'm not blowing smoke. That's what I felt. Like, these guys want to do things the right way. I'd heard they had that reputation. Then I experienced it, and I thought, that's what they do here. They focus on the journey, and what happens? The destination takes care of itself. All the numbers that Joe put up there, that's because the focus has been on the journey. So I'm probably preaching the choir when I talk about that. And maybe you're saying to me, what does that mean? I think it means this. I think it means rolling up your sleeves and doing the best job you can in every aspect of your life. I think a good definition of success is John Wooden. There are some young people in the room who probably don't know who John Wooden is. Most successful college basketball coach of all time. He coached at UCLA. In a span of 12 years, they won 10 national titles. No one has ever come close to that. No one ever will come close to that. 10 national titles in 12 years. John Wooden was their coach. He said, the meaning of success is the peace of mind, which is a direct result of knowing you did the best you could. Read that again. The peace of mind, which is a direct result of knowing that you did the best you could. Success. Focusing on the journey. That's number one, focus on the journey. Number two for you guys tonight is this. And that is what I call survivor's obligation. I mentioned when I was with that counselor that day, he said one of the stages of post-trauma stress you're going to go through is survivor's guilt. And I'm going to tell you guys, I never saw that coming. I want to look in the mirror and see the luckiest guy in the world. I mean, I survived when all these people around me did not. And I looked in the mirror a couple weeks after the crash, and I'm like, man, I feel so guilty. This little boy in front of me had his whole life in front of him. We're 2.5 feet apart, and he dies, and I come out with serious injuries. That guilt of that just racked me for so long. And I would have dreams about him, and every dream was the same. It was, I'm in a plane, we crash, and I'm trying to take care of this boy, and I can't find him. He gets thrown from his mom's lap, which happened in the crash, and I can't find him, and then I find his mom, which happened as well to me in the plane before we got out. And I insisted she leave without her child, and I think he was probably dead on impact. But that little boy in front of me caused me so much survivor's guilt. You can't even imagine. I couldn't sleep at night. For a couple of years this was happening to me, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I woke up one day after a nightmare just like that, and I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I survived when everybody around me did not. And this little boy I was convinced, and I still am, he's in heaven. He's in a good spot. I don't have to worry about it. His name was Evan. I don't have to worry about Evan anymore. I have to worry about me. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to replace survivor's guilt with survivor's obligation. And let me explain that to you. I think when we get our lives given back to us, and there are some people in this room I guess can probably identify with what I'm going to say. I think when we have a second chance at life, which I have gotten, got another start again, got my life given back to me, there's an obligation. That obligation is not to be some famous person. It's not to make a lot of money. It's not to be patted on the back and be told how great you sound on the radio. That's not it at all. I think the survivor's obligation is live your life to its fullest. I think that's what Jay would want. I think if Evan, who would be 35 years old now, I think that's what he would want. My parents are gone. My older sister's gone. I know that's what they want for my life. They don't want me to, you don't have to do something extraordinary. Just live life to its fullest. So survivor's guilt replaced by survivor's obligation. And think about this. I call it survivor's obligation, but aren't we all survivors? We're all here. We're all still breathing. Our hearts are still beating. There's some cancer survivors here. There are probably people who have survived car accidents. They're probably all across this room. But we're all survivors. We're still here. So maybe you, like I do, have that same obligation. That obligation is just to live your life the best you can possibly live it. Number one is focus on the journey. Number two is survivor's obligation. And number three is what I call just keep moving. Let me explain. Three things would just keep moving. Number one, when that plane came to a halt, I'm hanging upside down. By the way, one of the very few people in the area in that position. Everybody else had been thrown from their chairs, or their chairs had given, and they're thrown in their chairs. I'm hanging by myself. And I got out of that chair and dropped down the ceiling, and I remember I was going to, for some reason, wanted to go into the front of the plane. I think that's where the emergency exit was. And I thought, I turned, and this wall of smoke started moving slowly from the front of the plane to the back of the plane. And I'm looking, I'm going, I can't go forward. The only thing I could do is go backward. I remember telling myself, all right, this smoke might get you, just keep moving. If you don't keep moving, you're going to die. That was my thought at that point. But I tell myself over and over, just keep moving. Don't stop. You can stop and help people, but keep them moving. Just keep moving. And I eventually got my way out the back of the plane because I kept moving. About a year after the crash, my late father, who was an Iowa farmer, a man of very few words, but when he said something, when Dad said, we had 7 kids, I had 6 siblings, when he said something, we listened because he didn't talk very often, but about a year after the crash, I was talking to him on the phone, and again, he probably didn't handle the plane crash I went through all that well. He didn't know what to tell me, he didn't know what to say, but I was talking one day about a year after the crash about the nightmares I was having and just struggling. I was functional and I was working, but I was in this crazy funk. And I said, Dad, man, I just don't know what to do. And he said to me, Jerry, just keep moving. I thought, wow, that is really interesting. That's the best piece of advice my dad's ever given me. And his thought was, hey, don't sit around and wallow in self-pity. You don't need to, hit the bottle every night. Go out and do things. Keep moving. Keep being energized. Keep challenging yourself. Just keep moving, Dad said to me. And I thought, man, that is a great idea. And I'm going to do that. And I started doing that. I started riding my bicycle again, which led to something else. And I just thought, yeah, that is great advice. Just keep moving, because if we don't, we get stagnant, we're going to get in trouble. So keep moving. In 2015, I did Race Across America. Any cyclists here familiar with Race Across America? Any crazy cyclists like myself? We got a few here. So I had started riding my bike to try to find something physically I could do to combat the effects of this plane crash. And I had done some triathlons in my early 20s and had some success. I wasn't great, but I really enjoyed the cycling endeavor of the 3 sports. And I thought, I'll get back on my bike, and I got back on my bike and it just felt great. I just felt like I was alive again. A part of me died in that plane crash, and cycling made me feel alive again. And I decided, I got so into cycling, I was going to ride my bike across the country. So in 2003, I did that with my wife and 2 little kids. We rode from San Francisco to Yorktown, Virginia, came right through Colorado and Pueblo. It was 3,000 miles, and I did it as a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. We raised enough money to build a playground, which is still there and is awesome. And so I thought, this is great. I did about 100 miles a day. My kids loved it. They were in a different hotel swimming pool every night. They got to go to eat out every night. We had a great time. It was a great family adventure. And we raised a lot of money. We raised almost $200,000. So the next year, I thought, I'll do the same thing again. This is really fun. Second year, we rode from San Diego to St. Augustine, Florida, and raised money for an athletic field at a Christian school that my kids were going to at the time. And again, it was great. It was about 100 miles a day. I loved it. We had a great family vacation. I was doing the Nuggets. I had the summers off, and we took a month to do those 2 things. And I started getting stronger and stronger as a cyclist, and I thought, what if I, instead of rode my bike across the country, what if I raced my bike across the country with other racers? And I thought, well, that sounds crazy, but I got this competitive drive. And so I did a search, found this crazy race called Race Across America. A solo racer has to finish in 12 days or less to qualify. Quick math, that's 250 miles a day. At the least you have to do to be able to finish. And I thought, that's way too hard. I can't do that. That's not going to happen. And then I would look at that website, and I would see other people who did it. Other people finished it. And I thought, if other people can do it, why can't I? And then I look at it again. I think there's going to be no sleep, the weather, the elevation. There's 175,000 feet of elevation gain. I look at that website. I talk myself out of it. That's too hard. I can't do it. I don't have enough time to train. I had every excuse there was. I looked at that website, I'm not kidding you guys, for 10 years. 10 years I looked at that website, probably weekly, and I thought, every time I did, I talked myself out of it. Then I woke up one day and I thought to myself, I'm going to look at that website again. I go, what are you doing? It's going to be easier just to do the race than not do it. You're going to drive yourself crazy. So I didn't do it solo, but I decided to do it as a part of a team. So I did a 2-person relay team in 2015. I had a buddy in mind. I sold him on doing it. He thought I was crazy, and I thought he was crazy for joining me. But in 2015, we did Race Across America as a 2-person team. We actually won the 2-person division. I think we beat 7 4-person teams, and we did it in 7 days. So we did 415 miles a day, never stopped. We won the 2-person division of RAM. It was really hard. Oh, thank you. And all the things in that 10-year period that I told myself were going to be really hard if I did it they were exactly that. It was really, really difficult to do. The first day was 114 degrees in the Mojave Desert. It was brutal. So many teams and individuals had to drop out because of the heat. And we got through that, and then we got to Colorado in the elevation, and then we hit the Mississippi River, and about an hour after we got over the Mississippi River into Illinois, a rain came down, a thunderstorm hit. There's actually a documentary done about our race, and you'll see the rain if you ever watch the movie called Godspeed. It started raining in Indiana and Illinois, and it never stopped for 3 days. And I'm not kidding you. It started raining, and it didn't stop for 3 days. And we're in pouring down rain for the last 3 days of that race. There was a point in the Appalachian Mountains, we're about a day and a half from finishing, and at one point in the Appalachian Mountains, the way we did it was Brad would do an hour, and I would do an hour, and we'd switch off. We never stopped. We raced 24/7. But in the middle of the night, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, the rain is coming down in sheets, and I'm in the Appalachian Mountains. It's about 58 degrees. I'm freezing. The last thing I wanted to do when Brad was done with his pole was come out of that car and get on my bike. I just did not want to do it. And I remember getting out of the car, and I was warm and I was dry, and I got out, and within 10 seconds I'm soaked and I'm freezing. And I got on my bike, and I just told myself over and over, just keep moving. Just keep moving. And just move for an hour, and then Brad can take over, and then you can rest, and you can take over after that. But you got to keep moving, because I wanted to get back in that car and sleep is what I wanted to do. And I told myself, just keep moving. In your life, no matter where you've been, what kind of plane crash you have gone through, I'm telling you 3 things will enhance your life, and you'll lead a better life if you do these 3 things. Number 1 is focus on the real meaning of success, which is the focus on the journey. Number 2 is remember the survivor's obligation. Live your life to its fullest. And number 3 is, just keep moving. If you don't do those 3 things, I promise you, your life will be enhanced. Thank you, Dr. Ramos. Thank you, Jim, for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me share.